What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back once again with another episode of Puckin Around here on the Review Preview Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Noah Dogdobber, representing the Pittsburgh Penguins, joined by my buddy and co-host Brady Campbell, representing his New York Islanders. And Brady, we've kind of joked about it the past couple of days, but it seems like since our last show a couple of weeks ago, where we basically said both our teams were dead in the water and their seasons were over, they both went on massive winning streaks to get back in playoff contention. You guys are currently third in the Metro. Big win last night. I watched the last few minutes of it. Definitely a bit of a nail biter with the net pulled. And we've got I think points in our last 6 games or something like that. So I think we're I think we're a point behind the Capitals, like 3 points behind you guys or something like that. So we're both somehow still in it. I don't know how, but we are. There's about 6 teams, about 3 points within each other in that wild card race, man. But other than that, how have you been doing lately? How have you been enjoying the Islanders?
I've been doing pretty good, I will say. I've been, I guess, enjoying the Islanders, over the last week or so. A lot of tight games. They've had some tough matchups. They finally beat Nashville for the first time in since 2017, I think. So that was the first time in 10 games. And then that one against the Rangers, my heart was racing for pretty much the whole game. Especially, I knew it wasn't over after the first period. There was 3-0 us, but I was getting flashbacks to that outdoor game as soon as they started coming back. But yeah, they were able to hold on. I guess a little bit of controversy at the end, that cross check right before the empty net goal that probably should have been boarding. I'll take it. Although there was that other one, that collision with Zibanejad that Ranger fans were complaining about. I don't know if you saw that one, but Pellick's they're both looking down the ice and they both happened to collide, and the Rangers fans won the penalty because Zibanejad got hurt. But, that's Ranger fans. But overall, I'm enjoying my team's success a little bit. I did not think we'd be here, especially in the third spot in the Metro, let alone the wild card. But, still 1 week from tonight, I believe, is the last night of the regular season, or right around there. Still a few games left. Your Penguins, too. I feel like I'm always scoreboard watching now, and I feel like you guys aren't losing much either. I was watching your game against the Lightning. They came back, and then they blew it right towards the end. But, yeah, it's a little annoying with how many teams are still involved, although we called a little bit of a break last night with the Sabres and Devils getting eliminated. But yeah, this next week is going to be insane for, those spots especially. But around the league, there's still a lot to be decided as well.
Yeah, man, I'd say there's a lot of really close, interesting races, but I'd definitely say that Eastern Conference wild card is the most interesting because, like you said, now that the Devils are eliminated, there's still 4 or 5 teams competing for that spot. Most of them in the Metro, as well as the Red Wings over in the Atlantic. So a lot of really close races. Pens have been playing great lately. I mean, Malkin had 6 goals in 6 straight games or something like that. It was just they've just been on fire lately. They did lose in overtime, I think, to the Maple Leafs. I want to say night before last or something like that. But before that, they'd won 5 in a row. And like you said, against teams like they beat the Lightning. They also beat the Rangers in MSG. It was 5-2. It was ridiculous. When I saw that, I was like, holy crap, pretty much. But yeah, you guys have been playing well, man. That was a big one yesterday. As soon as I saw the score was 3-2, I was like, oh my God, is this actually happening again? But to their credit, from the bit I saw, and clearly, they didn't allow a goal in the third period, but from the last 5 minutes I saw, their defense was really good, man. A lot of really good block shots, a lot of really good hits. Like you said, the Trocheck, I do think it was boarding, but I don't care that the call was missed because I hate the Rangers. But,
Yep.
It is what it is. I'm never a big fan of blaming refs in games because me personally, there's so many parts of a hockey game to where you can win it that if you have to blame it on one call, I don't think you really deserve to win the game. If the Rangers really wanted to win that game, they shouldn't have gone down 3-0 in the first period.
There's also I mean, obviously, if they make that call, the Rangers, still have a very decent shot, 6-on-4, but there's only like 10 seconds left, so it'd still
Mhm.
be very difficult. Semyon Varlamov, too, has been playing out of his mind the last few games, so
Yeah,
that's
man.
definitely been a big part.
I was impressed. There was one shot which, to be honest, I think the guy that's shooting it kind of screwed up too. But it was a 2-on-1 one timer, and he made a really good save. And I was like, yeah, that was probably their best chance, and they didn't capitalize. That was probably it. But Varlamov's been great lately, which obviously Sorokin's still the guy. But if your backup can come in and do that in relief and help get you wins as well, I mean that's a big bonus. The Bruins made a living off that last season and pretty much this season as well with both their goalies. So, but we'll talk about the Metro a little bit later in the show. This will be a bit of a shorter one, but we're gonna go through the divisions real quick. Kind of check where things have developed since we last looked at these divisions a couple weeks ago. So we're going to start with the Pacific here. Now I got screen caps of the current standings. By the way, funny enough, no games going on right now. There's no games until 8 o'clock, so we won't have to worry about covering any of those. But I'll go ahead and put this up first. We're going to start with the Canucks, or the not the Canucks, the Pacific Division. So the Canucks are still leading it, 104 points. Edmonton at 99. McDavid, still doing his thing over there. And in third place, Brady. Now, I remember this was kind of what we were talking about mainly with the Pacific last time. Who would get that third spot? And even though the Knights went on a really good winning streak, it's still really close. The Kings have not really fallen off at all. And as we look here, 93 points for the Kings compared to 92 for the Vegas Golden Knights, who do have a game in hand. So it's basically the same situation there. Other than that, there's really no other Pacific teams. All the other ones pretty much kind of fell off. And I don't think there's any other Central teams besides the Blues that are still mathematically in it because I think the Wild can only get like 91 points or something, and the Knights already have 92 as a second wild card. But Brady, revisiting this division, don't really think a lot has changed, honestly. I mean, the Canucks and Oilers are still the top two, and that third spot is still up for grabs. I think when we last mentioned, we both predicted that Vegas would get it, and they do have that game in hand, so still a real good possibility. But I think we also mentioned this as well. LA is still a really good team. Like you can't just expect them to fall flat on their faces and do a nosedive. They made the playoffs uh, 2 or 3 straight years. I don't remember exactly, but they got a young core there that I think is going to keep developing. And then they got really good veterans as well. Kopitar and Dowdy, I think, have been really good this season. The situation in net has been surprisingly stable as well. Um, but obviously, Vegas, I do think they're a more talented team. I just think they've had some struggles in net as well, some injury concerns too. So I'd say I probably still would pick Vegas, but I am very impressed with how the Kings have kept it up all season to still be at third in this point. And granted, Vegas I think is underachieved this season, but I mean 93 points at this point, that's not a number to sneeze at by any means.
Yeah, I think if I still had to pick, I'd probably go with Vegas, especially with that game in hand and just the overall, I guess, playoff experience and moments like this. When it comes down to it, but I mean, the Kings early on in the calendar year kind of had that really rough stretch, but they picked it back up once they got it going again. They really haven't looked back too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really tough. I agree with you. Talbot, Riddich. There might be another guy in there, but I know those two guys for sure have been, doing at the very least a good enough job to keep them in games, and they obviously have a lot of young talent mixed with some veterans as well. I think they're a well-built team. We all know Vegas just completely added at the deadline, and I feel like maybe still they're underachieving compared to what we thought they were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Not like a drastic Stanley Cup hangover, but they, maybe a little bit of one because they now draft to that wild card spot as well. I don't think they have to worry about the Blues. I think that's too big of a margin with like 5 or so games
Mm-hmm.
remaining. So I think the teams we see now will be the playoff teams. And I know the Preds clinched, I think, last night. They've
Yep.
been doing so well in the Central, but yeah, the Pacific has really kind of been a powerhouse all season. Even teams like Vegas, who has had their struggles, they're still a team I would not want to face in the playoffs, and just on a nightly basis too, with the talent they have. And I know they've had a few guys with injury, and people are kind of saying this looks like the Lightning from a few years back as well, with kind of what they're doing with the IR. But I think I still am gonna go with them to beat out the Kings, especially with that game in hand too. That'll probably help them. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that part of the standings really came down to the final game or two, with Vegas playing the Oilers tonight on TNT. So that's a big one. The Oilers, of course, already in the playoffs as well. All three games just feature all Western Conference teams too. So I guess we get to take a little bit of a breather tonight.
Yep.
But yeah, I think I give the edge to Vegas there for that third spot, and the Kings I think would drop to the wild card. But same thing I said with Vegas. I don't think they really have to worry too much about St. Louis.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think St. Louis has rebounded well. They've kind of done what I thought the Wild would do, but the Wild have just been too hit or miss. I think they got 83 points right now, so pretty sure they're already mathematically eliminated. But even if they aren't, they have no realistic shot of making it. And even I think St. Louis is a stretch. But if I'm Vancouver, man, I actually think I want the Kings or the Knights to pass the Kings, because I would much rather play the Kings in the first round than the Knights. I think the Knights are that classic team that is way better than their record shows. They're not a number 8 seed by any means. Um, Granted, it's kind of ironic. The last time that the Canucks played a number 8 seed that was way better than they were and lost to them was the Kings back in 2012. But I still think they'd rather play the Kings, man. I would not want Vegas in a first round matchup. I think that's a total trap series. Kind of
Yeah,
like I think Boston might have a trap series if they have to play Tampa Bay in round one. I think that's that's way more difficult than you would normally expect a round one series to be. But moving over to the Central real quick, Brady. This one is kind of separated a bit. I think last time we covered this, these top three teams literally had the exact same amount of points. But lately, the Stars have kind of pulled away a bit. They're now 5 points ahead of the Avalanche. The Jets, with 102 points, comfortably in third as well. And the Preds, like you said, 95 points. I think they had an overtime loss last night because last I checked, they were on 94. But they officially clinched. Actually, funnily enough, Brady, literally 10 minutes after I put out the thing for the show saying, oh, the Predators are very close to clinching, they clinched. So it's like they knew pretty much and wanted to screw with me. But they've been incredible the second half of the season, man. And then they are St. Louis, like you said, 5 points behind Vegas with an extra game played as well. So I think it's kind of tough sledding for them. But regardless of Central, there's a couple things to mention that we should discuss. Number one, the Stars. Number two, who we think is going to get that second, that home ice advantage in that Avs Jets series, because that series looks pretty nailed on right now. And then the wild card teams, Nashville clinching the playoff spot.
yeah. The Stars. I believe I heard last night with the Rangers losing too. They're now, I want to say, a point behind them for the President's Trophy too, which, as we know, history shows you might not want to win the President's Trophy, but yeah, they were all tied or close to it in our last show, and they pulled ahead a little bit here. Not quite over yet. Obviously, if they lose out, I guess one of the teams, realistically, the Avalanche could jump them. But yeah, I think the Stars, they played some outstanding hockey as of late. They've kind of been they've been a very good team, but they have had a few stretches where they maybe were underperforming a little bit. But they've played their best hockey when they needed to basically lock up that one spot. I'm obviously not going to say they did quite yet, and they reached the 50 win mark, but yeah. And then that other series, I think I'm going to say Colorado. They have the 2-point advantage. The Jets do have game in hand. I think Colorado's going to get home ice advantage. I just
Mhm.
feel like overall they've been playing great hockey right now. I watched a little bit of their game last night when they beat Minnesota, and I mean the Jets are playing well too. But I just have a feeling that that game in hand won't come into play too much. The Avalanche are 5-4-1 in their last 10. The Jets are 4-5-1, so they've been relatively even. The Jets are on a 4-game win streak. I just feel like once again coming into play for me, kind of playoff experience or some of that a little bit, and the Avalanche I just feel like have kind of turned it on once again. And Nathan MacKinnon had a great game as well the other night,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna give it to them. And Nashville still hanging in there, but trying to do quick math, I don't think they really even have any chance to catch even the Jets. I think they're pretty much locked in to that one spot. But yeah, as you were saying, what a second half they've had. They went on that incredible run. I think it was like all of March basically, or at least like a month's time where they
Mhm.
didn't have like a regulation loss or something like that. They were like 19-0-2 or something. So they've been just ridiculous. They have dropped off a little bit from that stretch at least, but they're playing some of their best hockey right now. And no matter who plays them, I guess that would likely be Vancouver because Dallas is ahead of them right now. Or no, sorry, Vancouver's playing Vegas. Or no, Dallas. Dallas would play Vegas. Wait, no, now I'm confused because how does that? Because they space them out in divisions, right? With the playoffs. So would Vegas play
So
Vancouver?
so let's see. So the top team right now is Dallas. So they would play the second wild card, which is Vegas. Uh,
Okay, so
Van,
it's
yeah.
okay. So
So
then, yeah,
yeah, I actually did want to mention what the first round matchups would be.
Vancouver
Uh,
versus Nashville. Then,
yep,
yeah, they
Vancouver versus Nashville, and then the 2v3s, obviously.
yeah Nashville. You know, I we were talking about Vegas. At least as of right now, if I'm Vancouver, I wouldn't necessarily want to see Nashville too, but
Hmm.
I think that would be a very entertaining first round series from two teams that we probably didn't quite expect this from. But I think that would be a really entertaining series. But the Central has been very top heavy all season. Looks like we have a little bit of separation here right towards the end. But even that Nashville team, obviously it's a bit of a point drop off, but I think they could be scary come playoff time.
Yeah, man, it's interesting because I don't really think in the West is a team you look at and say, oh, that's the clear worst team. Like, that's the odd team out. I think Nashville, the second half of the season, like you said, has been incredible. Philip Forsberg has been amazing, but I've been really impressed as well by guys like Nyquist and obviously ROR, Ryan O'Reilly, chipping in at the secondary level on the offense. Yeah, I mean, Yossi's going to do his thing, and I've also been really impressed by Ryan McDonough. He's really been holding it down on that top pair, even though he's like 36 years old at this point. But their five on five defense is amazing. They're 14th in goals against, but that's because they have a 77% penalty kill. 5 on 5, they're actually really solid, and they've actually had decent goal scoring this season. They're 12th in the NHL right now, which I actually really like to see because Nashville, a lot of times over the past few years, and the reason they fall short in the playoffs is because they have really good defense and goaltending, but their offense falls short. But now they got guys like Forsberg, Nyquist, and O'Reilly kind of doing their thing offensively. As for Dallas, I think the reason they pulled away, their offense is it's not just one guy. Like with Colorado, like they have a lot of really good players, but that team runs through MacKinnon. The Oilers run through McDavid. The Lightning run through Kucherov. But with Dallas, I mean, Robertson's a beast. He's clearly like their leading guy. But they have nine guys, Brady, on their team with more than 50 points on the season. 8 of them are forwards. So, I mean, if your top nine is contributing at that level to where, if a guy like Robertson has a night off or has a bad night, and you got guys like Pavelski or Johnston or Hintz or Duchesne who can step up as well. They still have Ben and Sagan, who, granted might not be what they used to be, but they're still doing their thing. And then you add in Mason Marchment. I mean, I think Dallas has a really good chance. The main concern I have with them is what Ottinger are they going to get? Are they going to get that Ottinger that when he made his playoff debut against the Flames was absolutely incredible, standing on his head, gave him a chance in a series where a lot of people didn't even think they really had a shot? Or are they going to get Ottinger like he's been this season, to where he's had multiple games where I've seen him go up for like 5 or 6 goals. He gets pulled in the second period. Hasn't really had a good year. I think that's my main concern with Dallas. As for the Avs and Jets, I do agree. I think I'd probably expect the Avs to have home ice in that series. I just think overall they have a better team. The Jets still have talent, obviously. Shifley, Morrissey, Connor, and those guys I think are really good, as well as the best goalie in the NHL this season. Connor Hellebuyck has been absolutely ridiculous. But, I mean, when you look at the Avs, MacKinnon, 137 points, 51 goals, 86 assists. Very well could win the Hart. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. What a ridiculous Hart race we have right now, Brady. But Rantanen and McCarr as well. I mean, enough can't be said about those guys. And then Georgiev has kind of, taken a step back from last season, where I thought he was actually really good. So that'd probably be my main concern, where I would give the Jets a big advantage right now. But, yeah, the Central is very interesting. And like you said, potential playoff matchups right now. If the season ended today, which, I mean, this is all subject to change, this is very close, but Dallas is the 1 seed, would play Vegas, Vancouver versus Nashville, and then the Avs and Jets, and obviously the Oilers and Kings. So interesting matchups, man. Definitely not what you would expect from, an 18 playoff. I don't really see too many one-sided matchups there. I mean, maybe Nashville, but you can never count on a hot team coming in the playoffs. I mean, we've seen plenty of low seeds, have a good run going into the playoffs, and it ends up carrying over. So I'm very interested to see what happens in the West. Now let's get to our conference, the East, man. We're going to start with the Atlantic, obviously, but there's a lot to cover here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up for the East as well. So starting with the Atlantic, we have the Bruins, who are currently 3 points ahead of the Panthers, same amount of games played, so don't have to worry about games in hand or anything like that. Both teams have been playing really well lately, but the Bruins have managed to edge ahead a little bit. In third place, we have Toronto with 101 points, kind of solidifying their divisional playoff spot. And a bit further down, Brady, Tampa Bay, who had an absolutely horrific start to the season, has been amazing since the trade deadline. Anthony Duclair, my buddy Garth is a big Lightning fan. Anthony Duclair, from what I've heard, has perfectly kind of slid in to that, forward core. Kucherov doing his thing. Stamkos had a hat trick last night as well. And then, guys like Hagel, Nick Paul, Anthony Cirelli coming in as well. Defensively, solid. And Vasilevsky, the big thing for me, Vasilevsky has finally started playing like you'd probably expect him to, because he was really struggling earlier in the season. But, and then the Wings, I believe, actually, if I put this up again real quick, the Red Wings are much further down, currently 1 point behind the Capitals for that second playoff spot. We're going to talk about the wild card a little bit more when we get the Metro, because, I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous, all those Metro teams. But, main takeaways from the Atlantic, Brady, the Bruins edging ahead of the Panthers a bit, the Leafs with that divisional spot, and the Lightning, officially clinching a playoff spot.
Yeah, I based on the fact that I think the games in hand are the same, I would give the edge to the Bruins to get that one spot for the Atlantic. I just think being 3 points ahead with, I want to say it was like 4 games left, and having the team that they have, I could look at some of their matchups, but I think they should have that one locked down. But that was an incredible, kind of back and forth race for the last, it felt like 2 to 3 months between those two teams. And, the Leafs pretty much have that third spot locked up. They're playing some pretty good hockey. Austin Matthews just having an unreal season, leading that team. And obviously the guys around him too. William Nylander having a great season. Although it's looking like they'll play the Panthers, maybe the Bruins, likely the Panthers. And, well, they finally won the series last year, but then they ran into the Panthers. So I'm sure Leafs fans probably not too excited to see that team again after they finally won the series and lost from in 5 games. But we'll see if this Leafs team is different. Austin Matthews, as I said, playing out of his mind. He, along with a lot of those guys, kind of, you know, disappeared to some extent, at least come playoff time, which is why we barely have ever seen them win a playoff series in basically our lifetime, or at least since those guys have come around, especially too. But yeah, I think those spots are pretty much locked up. Tampa, as you mentioned, have been playing outstanding. They beat us. We didn't look like we had much of a chance in that one a few weeks back. You guys played well against them. They came back though, as you mentioned. Duclair, I think he had a goal in that game. Vasilevsky, I feel like in that game he didn't play too well, but overall, as you mentioned, he's getting back to form, and that is not a good sign for really the Eastern Conference as a whole. Mm-hmm. Kucherov still having an incredible season. Stamkos, all those guys, a lot of their core is still intact from those Stanley Cup runs too. So, I mean, we kind of knew this coming in, but they were maybe underachieving to some extent. But especially right now, they're a team, whether it's I guess right now would be Boston playing them, but whoever ends up playing them, another team I would not want to face. And I feel like a lot of these wild card teams could be pretty dangerous. Maybe with the exception of whoever gets the second spot in the East, but it's still playoff hockey, so you never know. But yeah, the Atlantic has been kind of a juggernaut. At least the top 4 or 5 teams this season, they have a chance to get 5 teams in as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this top 4 is stacked. Tampa, I think, is finally starting to play. I'm looking at their last 15 or so games. They've only lost 3 of them, and they've won a lot of games in convincing fashion by 3 or more goals. Beat Montreal 7-4, Toronto 4-1, Islanders 4-1, like you mentioned, Sharks 4-1, Rangers 6-3 a couple weeks ago, and then they beat the Flyers 7-0 on March 9th about a month ago. So, they've just been killing it lately. Kucherov has been ridiculous. Their power play is 30% in the season, which is just unbelievable. Penalty kill is good as well. Honestly, their main struggle this season, I think, has been 5-on-5 defense. But, like we said, I think Vasilevsky's been much better lately. Resident Rangers fan, Tom Scavetta, coming in. He's been fired up about WrestleMania lately. And, Rangers doing well as well. So we'll see what they do in the playoffs. But, yeah, the Atlantic is crazy, dude. These playoffs, so Florida versus Toronto, that's an interesting one. Like you said, Toronto's going to want to kind of avenge their fate from last season.
I didn't even realize, too, Toronto, I guess, still has a shot at the 2.
Yeah.
They're only 3 points back? Wow. Okay.
Technically,
so
they still
have a shot at home ice then.
Mathematically, they still have a shot to win the division. I just don't. I don't think that's going to happen. But they could get home ice, especially because they have the game in hand. If they win that, they're 1 point behind Florida. Which home ice could be big in that series. Toronto has one of the best home ice advantages in the NHL, in my opinion. Those fans are nuts, both in good and bad ways. I'll leave it at that. But like I said earlier, man, you want to talk about a trap series? Boston against Tampa Bay would just be absolutely nuts. I might actually lean towards Tampa Bay in that series, the way they've been playing. And plus, the past couple of years, they've had actually good playoff success against Boston. So I think that would be a great series to kind of keep an eye on. But moving on over to the Metro. Metro has just been absolutely nuts lately. Go ahead and put the standings back up here real quick for that. So the Rangers, after the L last night, they're still 3 points ahead of the Hurricanes. So both teams have been great lately, but the Rangers have kind of kept their slight lead with some really good results lately. They will be frustrated that they lost last night, because I think if they had won that game and the Hurricanes had lost, which obviously they didn't, they would have clinched the Metro. But it's still alive as of now. And then your Islanders, like you mentioned, man, third place, 87 points. But, they're basically in the wild card race, because if you look at this wild card, so, I kept in all the teams are still mathematically in it. You got Washington, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia, 85, 84, 83 points respectively, all still in that wild card race, desperately trying to make it. Um, I think when we mentioned this a few weeks ago, I did predict Washington to be that team that would get in, and they're currently there with 85 points, minus 40 goal differential. Kind of sticks out a bit, but Pittsburgh as well. All these teams except the Flyers have 78 games played. Flyers have 79. Um, I'll just go ahead and say it. I don't think the Flyers are going to make it. I think they choked right at the end. I don't. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Um, they left it too late, man. They collapsed in the bottom of the ninth. I think there's just too many teams that they have to compete with now. They had momentum all season, and then when it mattered the most, they just absolutely dropped the ball. I'd love to see it. As for the other four teams, you got obviously your Islanders, Detroit, Washington, Pittsburgh. I think there's someone I'm forgetting, but it's basically a toss up at this point, pretty much. So we'll start with your Islanders, obviously, because that's your team. But what have you been most impressed by from this winning streak? Because you mentioned the last time we were on, you were basically like, that was the game they lost to the Red Wings, I think 6-3 or whatever it was, and you're like, well, that's our season over with. We really needed to win that game as a team, trying to compete with wild card, and they got killed, and that was it. And then they went on this winning streak. So what have you seen, from this winning streak, main reasons why they've gone on that run?
Yeah, well, the winning streak started with them having a lead in Philadelphia and giving up a point with about 7 seconds left, 7 seconds left, something like that. And, I thought, oh boy, like this really isn't good. They did get the overtime win, so they got that extra point. But at this point, they were still, 2-3 points maybe behind Philly. But they just kept rolling and some big wins. The Preds one I mentioned, obviously Predators are a Western Conference team, but a very good team at that right now. The Rangers won last night, of course, was insane. And these teams aren't doing very good. Columbus and Chicago, those were 2 wins for us. But the Chicago game, we were down 1-0 going into the third period. Columbus gave it a good run. It was 2-2 in the third period in that game. So yeah, I'm still a bit worried because while we are winning hockey games, they've been, most of them have been pretty ugly. I know a lot of them have been against pretty good teams too. So obviously, especially this team's not going to come away with an easy victory. But overall, I'm definitely impressed with the goaltending, especially Varlamov. One of the best games I ever watched him play Saturday night against Nashville. Got the shutout when there were a lot of good chances for the Predators. Played great last night again. Once again, that game might have not have been as close as it was if they just would not take penalties, because both Ranger goals were again on the power play. They've lost a few games where basically every goal was a power play goal for the other team. But overall, I'm impressed with that. And I will say, the last few games, especially that Ranger game, while the Rangers had a lot of zone time kind of in the last 2 periods, I feel like they didn't have a whole lot of grade A chances. I feel like we kept them to the outside for the most part. So I feel like they're kind of getting back to playing better hockey just overall. Still maybe these games are a little too close against some of the worst teams, although, some of the worst teams at this point in the season really have nothing to lose. So, they're playing pretty loose, and I'm sure I'll be, having a heart attack tomorrow night as they try to narrowly escape Montreal to try to make the playoffs. But yeah, overall, I'm very happy with the fight and how the guys haven't given up on their season basically since that Detroit game. But yeah, overall, this division and wildcard race has been insane. Detroit had that fall off there, kind of back to some extent, at least playing 500 hockey, keeping themselves in it. Washington, I've been annoyed with that all season because obviously they still have some great players, but I just did not feel like they would really compete to the extent that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And especially lately, they've been winning a lot. Your Penguins have been winning a lot too. Although there was that one night, the other night, I forget, we just came off a win and we needed 3 teams to lose in that wild card race, and they all did, which was amazing. I could not believe that happened, but it's still insanely close. And I don't know if this thing gets decided until like that Wednesday night next week or whatever the last day really is. But yeah, I'm finally happy to see Philly. They're not out of it, but they have not been playing well as of late. And, to all the Flyers fans, we told you so. But this is just insane. And I thought last year's was crazy when it came down to those last few days between both of our teams. But 5 teams with like 4 games left is unbelievable.
Yeah, the Flyers, we predicted for about 5 months, and eventually I guess it came true. Like you said, they're not out of, like, they're not eliminated yet, but I do think it's going to be very tough. They've lost basically all momentum. So go ahead and put ourselves on the hot seat a bit here. Let me remove this banner real quick. So between the Islanders, Capitals, Penguins, Wings, and Flyers, Brady, which of those 3-5 teams do you think make the playoffs, and which 2 miss the playoffs?
I want to be biased, but I also am not even that sure of my own team. I feel like I also got to see maybe like the schedules of every team, but
yeah,
this is tough because obviously the only path in for the Wings is that wild card spot. The other teams have a chance at 2 spots still, I guess.
Only 2 of 5 can make it. It's tough. Friggin' 4 points between them.
I'm gonna say it. I think my Islanders get in at least. Do I have to specify which spot? I guess
no. You can just say which 2 teams you make. It doesn't matter.
I think my Islanders get in. I mean, a lot of these teams are playing pretty good hockey, but they're borderline red hot right now. I think they got to win at least 2 of the 4 games and get a little bit of help, if not win at least 3 of the 4 games, which isn't going to be easy. But they do play Jersey and Pittsburgh, 2 teams. Well, I guess they're not competing with Jersey, but 2 teams that are right around that kind of spot. This is kind of annoying too because a lot of these teams are playing each other still a few more times. But I'm gonna say my Islanders, and this is insane.
It is. Gotta get put on the hot seat, man. It's not easy.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Detroit. I really don't know, but I just feel like those guys like Kane and Larkin and Sider and all those guys, I think they pull it off and they finally get back to the playoffs. Maybe overachieving slightly as far as this year goes, but and I don't know really how they'll fare against a team like the Rangers, but it's tough. I'll give it to the Wings though.
Yeah, for me, first one I do think is the Islanders. I think they've gone on a great streak at the right time, and looking at their last 4 opponents, on the road against the Rangers is tough. But maybe if the Rangers keep winning, and they kind of think they've locked up that number 1, it might be easier than you expect. They play the Canadiens at home; they should win that easily, and they play the Devils on the road. The Devils have been terrible all season, and they're already eliminated. So I would expect them to win that. And then final game of the season, go figure. Our 2 teams playing each other. It is a home game for you guys. So, I mean, it's basically a toss-up, but I think they have enough of an edge in the standings to where they don't have to worry as much as some of the other teams. For the Flyers, they play on the road at the Rangers tomorrow. That's a big fat L for them. They've lost 8 in a row. They have 2 points in their last 8 games. If you go even further back, since like February 27th, they have won 6 games and lost like 16. Like I just did a quick count on
That's
that.
not good.
Not good at all. They play the Devils after that, which they could win, and then the Capitals as well, which is not an easy game by any means. So I think the Flyers are out. Detroit does play the Canadiens twice, home and away to end the season. But they do have road games against Pittsburgh and the Maple Leafs, which could be tough. So I could see them getting to 88 points. As for Pittsburgh, man, Pittsburgh's got it tough, man. They got Detroit, Boston, Nashville, and on the road, the Islanders. All four good, are decent teams. They don't have a team they're playing like the Canadians. So, unfortunately, I probably say Pittsburgh misses, which I might go with Washington because they play the Sabres and Flyers, which I think are two very winnable games for them. They do play the Lightning and Bruins, which is tough as hell, but maybe they could, kind of fly under the radar a bit in those games, especially the Bruins. They play the Bruins the next to half last game of the season. If the Bruins have the number one seed locked up, they potentially could, take it easy, maybe rest some starters as well, which could play a factor. So, second one, I'd say either the Capitals or Wings. I'll probably go with the Capitals, but I'm not very confident on that. I think that second one's basically a toss-up. I do think the Islanders are pretty safe. I think they've got enough of a cushion. They've been playing great lately. It's just, can they carry that over that hot streak in the playoffs? Because the way it's looking like now, Brady, and we'll go ahead and do what the playoff matchups would be if the season ended today. You guys would play the Hurricanes again, who you did lose the last season, but I think it was closer than some people might have thought it was.
Yeah.
A 6-game series. I'd rather and then the Rangers playing the Capitals currently. That's subject to debate. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Whichever team makes the number 2 wild card, I feel bad for them because I think the Rangers are just going to absolutely steam blitz pretty much any of these teams. I could be wrong. Washington has had a lot of close series with them in the past to where you might not expect it. But Pittsburgh, I mean, I've seen this movie with Pittsburgh and the Rangers before. It doesn't usually go well for them. And then Detroit and Philadelphia, I just don't think can compete with them at all. And then in the Atlantic, Boston would be playing Tampa, which, like we said earlier, interesting series, and Florida, Toronto. So these races are insane, man. And speaking of insane race, final topic of the show, this Hart Memorial Trophy Race, Brady. So I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share real quick of the NHL stats leaders. This has been ridiculous. So I was looking up the betting odds for the Hart yesterday, and pretty much every site I was looking at, like rather consistently, I think every single one had Nathan MacKinnon as like a minus 300 or 400 favorite over Nikita Kucherov. If we look at these stats, Kucherov leading the NHL in points, 139 points in 77 games played. Just let me remove this real quick. It's absolutely ridiculous. Let me zoom in as well. Give me a minute real quick. There we go. So Kucherov, 139 in 77 games played. Nate MacKinnon, 137, 51 goals. He had like 4 points last night. It was just absolutely ridiculous. He became, I think, like only the 6th Av ever to have a 50-goal season, which is pretty crazy considering the players they've had, but he did that. McDavid, now this is an interesting one, Brady. I've been keeping track with this, points lead race for, last couple of weeks. There was a point in the season where McDavid, I mean, he was way down in like 6th, but then he had like an insane couple of weeks. And at one point he was only like 1 point behind these guys. But then, they just kept doing the thing, having like 3 or 4 points a night. And then he had a off game where he'd only get like 1 point or whatever. And they did have a game where they got shut out as well. So he's kind of fallen back a bit as well. Only has 74 games played. He is day-to-day currently as well. 99 assists. The fact that him and Kucherov get 100 assist seasons, it's just absolutely insane. Panarin with a measly 116 points as well. But another guy I want to highlight, a little bit further down, Austin Matthews with 66 goals, Brady. Only the second active player to have more than 65 goals. Alex Ovechkin had 65 back in the, I want to say 06-07 season, which was absolutely insane back then. He's got 66. technically he could reach 70 goals. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the fact it's even possible is just ridiculous. Um, so, Brady, got to put ourselves in the hot seat again. Who do you think wins the Hart Trophy this year?
Yeah, well, I think, if I feel like it at this point, it's probably between one of the top three guys, maybe Matthews, but that's mainly, I feel like, based on his goal, uh, 66 goals and counting, probably. I feel like out of those, guys, then or at least out of the top three, if you based it solely on the fact of which team would be the worst without that player, I feel like it would be McDavid with Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do feel like, as crazy as it is, considering he had, I guess, a slow start, and so did his team, to come back and now be third in points and first in assists right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not gonna say him, but I mean, if he has an insane last 3-4 games, it's very much possible. Although, like you said, he's day to day, I believe. But I think it's really between one of the top two guys, and
Yep.
it's really almost a toss up for me. Um, I think especially if he does happen to get to 100 assists, obviously that doesn't necessarily, that's not like end all be all, but I feel like Kucherov, especially since the Lightning, although they're looking very good right now, had a bit of a down year for the most part. I mean, we knew they might not be like a top two team, top three team, maybe, but they really had their struggles early on. He never really did. So I think I'm gonna say Kucherov, but especially watching MacKinnon last night and all that, it's basically a toss up. I think, honestly, it kind of feels weird to say in like a points race for a trophy compared to teams competing for playoff spots, but I feel like it could almost come down to these final two games, and then combining that with overall the rest of the season, especially now that it's crunch time. I mean, the Lightning are secure really in their spot. Um, the Avalanche could obviously flip flop if they struggle, but I'm going to give it to Kucherov. I just think the Avs are probably overall a little bit of a better team than the Lightning. Obviously, they're playing different conferences and all that as well. But this whole race has just been insane to me.
I mean, what a season, man! Like the playoff races and this race as well. It's just been absolutely ridiculous. Definitely one of the most competitive, interesting seasons I've seen in quite a while. I think the past few seasons have been like that as well. But I will say, I got nothing against McDavid. I love the guy. He's very fun to watch. I do think he's still the best player in the league. But it is nice to see a Hart Trophy race this season after last season where it felt like he had like 300 points and it just wasn't even a conversation all season. I do like that we've actually had a really close fight this season. As for who I think wins it, no disrespect to Austin Matthews. I love Austin Matthews. He's had an incredible season. 66 goals is just unbelievable. Um, and at this point in his career, he's outpacing what Ovechkin does, what Ovechkin did, which is nuts because Ovechkin's probably going to reach 900 career goals. But I don't think he has enough assists, man. I think if he had like 100, 110, 115 points, he would be right there. But I mean, only 38 assists is pretty crazy when you're comparing to the other guys that have in the 70s, 80s, and obviously MacKinnon and McDavid in the 90s and probably 100s very soon, which is ridiculous. So I think he's out right away. I think McDavid has been incredible, like you said, but I think they'll probably give it to one of the other two guys, and can't really disagree with that. I think they've been slightly ahead most of the season. I mean, they were way ahead early in the season. And then McDavid went on an insane run. Um, I will say this: it would be interesting. We do have the Maurice Richard for most goals. I think it'd be cool, Brady, if they had a trophy for most assists, Wayne
Yeah,
Gretzky trophy or something like that, because you should be recognized. The fact you're going to get 100 plus assists is just ridiculous. And so that would be cool to see. But it's between the top two now. I will say this: uh, I would not be surprised if MacKinnon won it. He definitely deserves consideration he's had. I do think it's a bit crazy though that pretty much literally every betting site that I looked at had him as a clear favorite. Like, it wasn't even close for him, minus 400. I think it's pretty much a dead heat between these guys. And the reason I'm going to agree with you and give it to Kucherov slightly over MacKinnon, number one, I think Tampa Bay has overall struggled more this season. So I think value-wise, it's always weird saying that word, but value-wise, I think Kucherov is a little bit more valuable. I was looking at a stat, actually, the other day. It was percentage of players' points compared to their goals. So how often are they involved in goals? Nikita Kucherov is involved on 50% of Tampa Bay's goals. Every other goal, he gets at least a point, which is absolutely crazy. It was the highest number in the NHL. MacKinnon was right up there as well. I think he was like, I don't remember the exact number, but maybe like 46, 47%. So it was still ridiculously high, but it was a little bit lower. I think Kucherov, like I said, the Lightning have been worse this season. So I think he's shown a bit more because Stamkos has really fallen off. He's still a good player. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he scored a hat trick last night, but he's not the guy he used to be. Like Kucherov is their clear number one. MacKinnon is the number 1, too, for the Avs. But like, if he has an off night, Rantanen at number 7 in the points right there, 40 goals and 102 points. I mean, they have a clear number 2 as well. So it is very tough, but I'm probably going to give it to Kucherov. He's just been insane lately. I would not be surprised if they gave it to MacKinnon, and I don't think it'd be a robbery or anything if they gave it to MacKinnon. I think if they give it to either of those two, it makes complete sense. But like a 55-45 split, I guess, in confidence, I'd probably go Kucherov. But it's ridiculous, man. I mean, 2 guys that are going to get 140 plus points, maybe 3 if McDavid can come back and just light it up the last few games. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like the talent in the league, man, has never been better than it has right now. These guys are just going out there, giving it their all. I mean, Quinn Hughes is going to win the Norris. It looks like he's just been ridiculous for Vancouver this season. Connor Hellebuck with the Vezina, probably. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like the league is in such a good place, man. It really has been incredible. I mean, I've always liked the NHL. Don't get me wrong, but it feels like the last 2 or 3 years has been the best I've ever seen it, and it's only getting better. Like it seems like last season I was saying, "Oh, this is probably the best season I've ever seen," and then it feels like this season I'm saying the exact same thing. It's just, I just love it, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. Especially, I mean, the playoff races we still have with like 5, less than 5 really games to go, and as you mentioned, the trophy races, mainly the Hart. A few of them are more locked up or close to it, but yeah, and I think come playoff time, I feel like at least half the series between the 2 conferences are I don't know about toss ups, but you could definitely kind of picture a world in which the lower seed pulls off an upset,
Mm-hmm.
or at the very least, I think there's a lot as well where the lower seed at least gives it a really good run. I've never really been more excited for the playoffs. Of course, I still got to sweat out the end of the regular season, and I think we were talking that, like, at least in hockey, I feel like once in a while, you want your team to make the playoffs and play in the Stanley Cup playoffs and possibly win a Stanley Cup. But like, sometimes it is nice to kind of sit back and just enjoy probably, definitely one of, maybe even the best, playoff postseason in professional sports, at least here in North America. But that being said, I'm really excited. I'm hoping my Isles pull it out. They're in a good spot, but I've seen this happen too many times. Especially them. They had earlier in the season the win streak right into the losing streak. I'm really hoping that doesn't happen. But the Eastern Conference wild card, crazy. Still stuff to be decided in the West as well, and seeding, and just overall, this season has been a huge victory for the NHL. I feel like they had a lot of great events and all that as well. And I feel like they're starting to, get maybe slowly but steadily, more recognition, where obviously, NFL, MLB, NBA, those are kind of all ahead of the NHL, at least in like popularity, and even got like the MLS creeping up on the NHL. But I mean, if they get more viewers, I think the league could really explode. Although now I don't know what's going on with the Coyotes too. I don't know if you saw that today. Maybe Utah
Was there
now. So
was there some news that came out? I mean, I just know the Coyotes in general are an absolute disaster, but yeah, if there was news that came
yeah,
out, I missed it. What happened?
okay. So I mean, you probably saw like last week or whatever, right? They were kind of announcing plans of a new arena
Hmm.
in Arizona. Well, now there was something that said the NHL is preparing because I guess they're skeptical about that, so they're preparing to possibly move them to like Salt Lake City for next season. I
Bro,
don't know how that works exactly. Like at this point, like
sounds
we're basically at the playoffs, but
sounds kind of like the A's situation, honestly.
yeah,
Which, God, you want to talk about an absolute dumpster fire of a situation? Don't even have a city name in front of your team name. Just gonna be called the A's. It's just, oh my God, it's ridiculous, man. Don't get me started. But yeah, I'm
no,
not
I
surprised.
agree.
I'm not surprised by the Coyotes. It's just been like that friggin' college arena they were playing. It's just an absolute joke. Like they really need to relocate somewhere permanently. Where I don't know. I'm not the guy to ask about that. I mean, I know a lot of people love the idea of getting a team back in Quebec, but Quebec didn't work the first time. As for other places, I'm not too sure. And plus, for some reason, the NHL for some reason wants to expand beyond 32 teams, which I think is ridiculous. But you
Yeah,
know, it is what it is, man. But yeah, definitely my favorite postseason coming up. Stanley Cup playoffs is just nuts. Um, but like you kind of allude to, it's also the most heart attack inducing postseason in my opinion. I mean, I've seen don't get me wrong, a lot of heart attack inducing games in other sports. I mean, I see my team lose a Super Bowl in a terrible choke job. I've seen my team win a World Series with some very nerve wracking games along the way. See my college team win some championship games as well, which were nerve wracking. But dude, nothing compares. I don't think anything's even the same stratosphere as Game 7, all on the line, especially as Game 7 overtime. Like when we had that Game 7 overtime against the Rangers, that was the most crushing. Like that's the thing about hockey. It gives you the most crushing, but also the most memorable, I think, moments. Like, yeah, yeah. Thanks, Tom. I was trying to avoid saying it directly, but it gives you the most crushing moments, but also gives you the greatest moments, man. Like when I
yeah,
saw the Pins went back to back, um, that was just remarkable to see because they finally broke through. They're kind of like what they are now, where they just could not get deep in the playoffs. They won that one cup against the Red Wings, and they had multiple years to where they had great regular seasons, but then they lose in like the first or second round, and then they just broke through. They got that Kessel trade and put them over the top. Obviously, it's been misery since then, but I always have those memories, which a lot of people don't have. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't think my team has any shot, even if they do make the playoffs. So I don't know who I'm going to be rooting for. Probably the Lightning because they're probably my second favorite team. They're definitely a team that I was considering being a fan of when I tried to get to hockey, and I realized, oh, there's no Georgia team because both our teams failed and moved to Canada. But yeah, that's
yeah.
all we
I
got
feel
for
like
tonight. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. No, I just going back to your like roller coaster of emotions too. A perfect example from my standpoint was Beauvillier, overtime winner, last game at the Coliseum, straight into a 1-0 shorthanded goal loss in Game 7 to go to the Stanley Cup final. But
Yeah,
I
they would have
mean,
won the Stanley Cup as
as
well.
painful, yeah. And
That was a
it was against
Stanley Cup Game
Montreal.
7.
it,
Montreal was not. They overachieved heavily, man. That
yeah,
was not even.
it
Yeah,
beat Vegas. That was Toronto. They came back, but yeah, as painful as some of the moments are when you see the good moments, whether it's your favorite team or just you know just in general. I mean, unless it's like the Rangers or something, but no, it's unbelievable.
yeah, definitely. That's all we got for tonight. Haven't decided when the next show will be. We'll kind of play it by ear. Obviously, end of the regular season will play a factor in the scheduling. So we'll see what happens. We're going to be doing predictions. Even if it's not live on a show, we'll be putting out graphics to where we pick each series and how many games it's going to be. So I don't know. Rangers in 6 over whoever they play, stuff like that. So we'll be doing that soon. It's going to be very exciting. We'll see who wins it. Maybe one of our teams will make a dark horse run. I wouldn't expect it, but you never know, man. Never count on a hot team when you get to the playoffs. And the regular season means absolutely not when you get to the playoffs, because we saw a team win like 69 million games last year in the Bruins, lost in the first round. That's just the way it goes with hockey, and that's why it's one of the most, if not the most, exciting sport on the planet, at least in my opinion. But from myself, Noah Dog Diver, and my co-host and buddy Brady Campbell, this has been another episode of Puckin Around here on the Reby Preview Sports Network. Until we see you next time, stay safe, enjoy your hockey, and keep pucking around.